Thank you. Thank you for everybody for coming along. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Salma Maqsood. I'm the Senior Vice President at Bristol Law Society and also a board member of the Ethnic Solicitors Southwest Network. Today, we're hosting our Islamophobia Awareness Month webinar, and I welcome our speakers, Imam Ghazi, a partner at Anstey, and also a board member of the Ethnic Solicitors Southwest Network. And we have Anya Patel here, who is a senior employment lawyer for the Islamophobia Response Unit. Anya was called to the bar in 2008 and is a member of the Honourable Society of Inner Temple. Anya has a very impressive background, but in short, she's a very experienced advocate, having addressed many tribunals and conferences tackling employment rights, equality and exclusion, and is a champion of equality and a catalyst for change. By joining the Islamophobia Response Unit, she adds enormous value to furthering the impact of the Islamophobia Response Unit, and in particular to those of Muslim faith, and enhancing equality for all, regardless and irrespective of their background. So just a very quick housekeeping point before we get started. The webinar is recorded. It will be followed by a Q&A session. And the Q&A session, all questions that are circulated to us are circulated on an anonymous basis. So we don't know, even as panelists or the chair, in fact myself, none of us know who's posted the question. The slides, I believe, will be shared afterward by email, but please do correct me if I'm wrong, Anya. And with that, I'm pleased to pass over to Imam, who will now begin the webinar.
Thank you very much, Salma. And hello, everyone. Welcome to this Islamophobia Awareness Month webinar in collaboration with the Bristol Law Society and the Ethnic Solicitors Southwest Network. So what is Islamophobia Awareness Month? It's something that has been around for a good few years now. It's something we've had a webinar like this in the calendar for the last couple of years. So some of you may have been to this sort of session before. For some of you, it will be a new experience. But the Islamophobia Awareness Month it's a campaign which is aimed at raising awareness. It was founded kind of informally by some more Muslim organisations, and what it aims to do is to showcase and highlight the positive contributions of Muslims to the UK community, and also, importantly, to raise awareness of Islamophobia in society. So each year, the Islamophobia Awareness Month has a dedicated theme. This year, we have called it Seeds of Change. So the goal of this year's campaign is to emphasise the importance of how small actions can contribute to a big change. So it's a case of thinking about what are the small things that each of us can do that over time, or by repetition, or by sharing, it can have a long-term effects. For me, a couple of examples of these kind of small seeds that we can plant would be, maybe I'll give one kind of personal example and one kind of professional example. Okay, on a personal level, I think one thing we can do is just have more conversations. So for those Muslims who are listening in here, then it's important to have conversations with people of different faiths, and don't be shy to explain why it is we do the things we do. And likewise for those from non-Muslim backgrounds or from backgrounds of other faiths or no faiths, do take time to get to know any of your Muslim colleagues or friends out there, and just have those conversations. And don't feel sort of constrained as to what you can and cannot discuss. So I think, so first point would be to have those conversations, and out of those conversations, awareness naturally grows, and changes can be made. The second thing I would do at a sort of professional level, something I'm sort of quite interested in and passionate about, is on the kind of recruitment side of things. And there's a step that we could all make, which is around blind CVs, and maybe I'll come on to that in a while when I talk about some of the impacts of Islamophobia. So I'll move on. So what are the contributions of Muslims in the UK, for example? And I think what Islamophobia Awareness Month is keen to do is not just to focus on the problems that Muslims face by reason of their faith or the discrimination that is felt, but also just to take a step back and think, hold on, what are the Muslims in the UK doing? How are they contributing? And it doesn't take much analysis to realise that there are some huge contributions that are being made to really help develop UK society for the better. Economically, I think there's some analysis that there's a contribution of over £31 billion annually to the economy. Many Muslims are very entrepreneurial. They run lots of small and medium-sized businesses, which, as many of us know, are the kind of the heartbeat of the UK economy, employing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. If you look at sort of the public sector and just take the NHS as an example, there's a stat here that 46,000 Muslims work in the NHS, and there are nearly 13,000 Muslim doctors in the UK, which is approximately 10% of the UK workforce. There's some stats there around sort of contribution to the education sector. And yeah, from a fundraising perspective, I think there's lots of evidence and information out there around the huge contribution that Muslims make to the charitable sector, with sadaqah and zakat being sort of core parts of the Islamic faith, meaning that the amount of donations that come from the Muslim population into charities in the UK is far in excess of the mean or the median. And an example there on the screen is around sort of donation to food banks. A third of British Muslims donate to food banks, so we kind of are aware of the particular issues that affect our society and are keen to make a positive difference wherever we can. The final slide, the final bit of this slide, is just on sport, though an area which I'm personally very passionate about, and there's some interesting stats there resulting from Mohamed Salah's signing of Liverpool, which you can read for yourself. I tend to think back to Super Saturday in the London 2012 Olympics, when Mo Farah got his gold medal, and then went on to win a second, and the huge positive impact that had on the sort of perception of Muslims in society has been truly groundbreaking. And on sort of a grassroots level, we can all get involved in sporting activities, good for our health, but also good for interaction between different groups of people. And I also, one of my hats is that I help run a cycling group called Brothers on Bikes, which brings together a range of people from different backgrounds and gets them on a bike when they normally wouldn't be the sort of people that would get on a bike. So that's just an example of the sorts of contributions we make and the things we can all do. I'll just now talk very briefly about what is Islamophobia, and then hand over to Anya to talk about how we kind of the ways in which we can tackle Islamophobia. So Islamophobia, I'll maybe go on to the next slide, which is sort of how we define what Islamophobia is. The Centre for American Progress has probably got the most comprehensive definition, which says that it's an exaggerated, irrational fear, hatred and hostility towards Islam and Muslims, perpetuated by negative stereotypes, resulting in bias, discrimination and marginalisation of Muslims from civic, social and political life. So if you kind of unpick that, and you see there's quite a lot buried within that statement, which touches upon all of the aspects of Islamophobia that we're going to be kind of discussing during this webinar. But for me, I think the best definition is our local all-party parliamentary group on British Muslims, who came up with a definition. So this is a cross-sector group of politicians from all parties, and they were kind of agreed upon a sort of a simple definition. Essentially, Islamophobia is rooted in racism, and is a type of racism that kind of targets Muslims. So for me, that's kind of the way the way I think about Islamophobia, is that it's really just a form of racism, something that needs to be stamped out. So what the form that Islamophobia takes is varied. There are what people see. So you have the verbal attacks, which are unfortunately pretty common, and the physical attacks, which are fortunately not quite as common, but they do exist, and some of them are very serious. And a number of people have been killed as a result of these attacks in the UK. But I guess more to the point of today's webinar are the ones below below the radar, if you like, that people don't normally or don't normally kind of see, or isn't particularly visible, and that's around sort of discrimination, stereotypes, bias, conscious bias, unconscious bias, exclusion or feelings of exclusion, and marginalisation. And an example of that is a study which was done, I think around 2017, was reported in the BBC, looking at the sort of job prospects for Muslims, and it showed one of the outcomes of the study was the very clear sort of discrimination in terms of the progress of applicants from application stage to interview stage. If they had a Muslim sounding name, and they were actually 3 times less likely to get an interview if they had a Muslim sounding name compared to an English sounding name, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it does actually bear out anecdotally as well. I mean, I have friends who've had to or felt that they needed to sort of change their name in order to progress into a profession, and have been successful in doing so by making that change. And one of these, so going back to what I was saying at the beginning in terms of the seeds that we can plant now to make lasting change, one would be around our recruitment processes, and I'm a big advocate of the sort of blind CV approach. And for any firms out there that aren't using it, then you really kind of should be, particularly at the kind of the junior recruitment level. But that is all I wanted to say for now. So I'll hand over to Anya, who's going to talk a bit more about Islamophobia and the response of the Islamophobia response unit, and give some ideas of how we can help. And there will still be time at the end for Q&A, and thank you for those in advance who have already submitted their questions. So over to you, Anya. I'll stop sharing if I can.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you. That was very interesting. Let's just wait for my slides to appear.
I think they have appeared. They're good to go.
Have appeared? Okay. Right. Just bear with me 1 moment. Oh. Very well. The Islamophobia response unit. Our CEO, Majid Iqbal, says the Islamophobia response unit is a charity dedicated to supporting victims of Islamophobia. It was founded in response to rising anti-Muslim attacks and the growing tide of anti-Muslim sentiment across the UK. This service is for those who have suffered or who suffer an incident of hate crime, hate incident, or discrimination because of their Muslim faith and or perceived Muslim faith in the UK. Who am I? I'm Anya Patel. I'm IRU's senior employment lawyer, formerly director, campaigner and spokesperson for the National and European Professional Associations and Copyright Societies for British creative workers. I have represented up to 80,000 British creative workers across the UK, in Westminster at home and in Brussels, persuaded the UK's government to implement EC Directive Droit de Suite, employment rights and codes of practice for freelancers. Called to the bar in 2008, and as Salma said, a member of the Honourable Society of Inner Temple, a very proud member. I've represented individuals in public, private and third sector organisations, including corporate business and charities, at a contentious level at employment tribunals across the UK, at a non-contentious level in-house in business. And I am a very experienced advocate, even though I say it myself. I've addressed many tribunals and conferences at home and abroad, tackling employment rights, equality and exclusion, amongst others, to include speaking at UNESCO's Parallel Conference in From the Margins in Stockholm and an EC conference entitled Citizenship in Naples. I am a champion of equality, a lifelong champion and a catalyst for change. I'm deeply committed to furthering the impact of the IRU. About the IRU, well, the Islamophobia Response Unit is an independent charity supporting victims of Islamophobic hate crime and discrimination. It provides free legal advice, advocating on behalf of clients, providing practical and emotional support, and collecting and analysing data on Islamophobia. It is a very influential tool and charity. Who are we? Well, our legal team comprises of our CEO, Majid Iqbal, myself, and Sam Allen, our legal intern. We're a small team with big reach because we are supported, very importantly, by the goodwill and commitment of our 67 volunteer caseworkers and 25 volunteer legal supervisors. And we are eternally grateful for their contribution to the charity, without which it would not operate at the level and influence it does. Our services, well, in a nutshell, what we do, we deal with two categories of cases: hate incidences and crime. This includes physical assault, verbal abuse, harassment, and criminal damage. The next category, discrimination. General discrimination, discrimination in education, and discrimination in employment settings. Okay, let's look at that in a bit more detail. Let's look at hate crime. What do? We provide emotional support. And if we're unable to do that, we're able to signpost you. We help you to report to the police. We gather and record data, and we liaise with the police for you. We're making complaints against the police. So we work in partnership with our clients, and we adjust our approach and conduct according to our instructions from our clients as we act in their best interests. In education, well, we do attempt to resolve matters informally if at all possible, as we do think there is very constructive learning and development outcomes from informal resolve. But we will support you in writing formal complaints, in escalating complaints, in assisting with appeals, complaining to the Department for Education, and, as I said, signposting to other services and referring to partner agencies. In employment, we have two tiers of service. The first tier being free services, free representation, guidance and advice for pre-litigation matters to non-contentious level, operational in-house. For example, grievances, disciplinaries, redundancy processes, if you think that the real reason for redundancy is a discrimination reason. We can help support you raise formal grievances and also guide you at the appeal stage. Our tier 2, various funding options for this, not simply free, because we are a charity and we are a not-for-profit charity, so all monies accrued are invested into the good work and the aims and objectives of the charity, which can be seen on the Charity Commission website. So we work in partnership with ACAS. We have strong negotiators in-house and externally who can negotiate settlements and or COP3s. We also are able to issue employment tribunal claims on your behalf. We act in your best interest and we work to your instructions. And we provide legal representation, advocacy at tribunal, full merits hearing, case management conferences, pre-hearing reviews, and or at appeals. So what is Islamophobia? Verbal and physical attacks, discrimination, inclusion and stereotyping. And we reference the all-party parliamentary group definition on Islamophobia as follows. Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. What is perceived Muslimness? Well, I'm an Anglo-Indian professional and I have been perceived as being Muslim and being treated less favourably as a result. And I ought to say, I am not a Muslim, but I've been perceived to be one. Why is the IRU needed? Well, it's a pivotal charity at a pivotal time in history. And in March 2024, nearly 2 in 5, that's 38% of religious hate crime offences were targeted at Muslims. The IRU's own data also suggests significant underreporting. This is a 763% increase in the number of IRU hate crime reports received in October 2024 alone. And there you see our graph, the proportion of religious hate crimes for 2023 for 2024. Underreporting. Well, the speak out culture is one that has emerged in recent years, which is positive. However, it is not reflective of the real terrain of Islamophobia. British Crime Survey Superintendent Andy Bennett says there's a substantial gap between reported and unreported crime, and in some crime categories it can be as much as 50%. The survey, unsurprisingly, shows even higher levels of underreporting for hate crime. Every time I talk to Muslim groups, I can never find anybody who hasn't suffered from some form of hate crime, and therefore my gut tells me that underreporting is probably off the charts. We'll play a short video now, which is quite touching, just to make you aware, and quite sensitive, as follows. Very well. Now we turn to case study 1. In December 2003, during a science lesson, the victim's teacher said, yes, that's because yes, that's because there's loads of mosques there and they, Muslims, are inherently aggressive people. The victim, who was the only Muslim in the class, was shocked and upset by this, unsurprisingly. His mother immediately contacted the college with a complaint. The IRU supported the victim and his mother in navigating the appeal process. Our client's complaint was upheld. The college issued the victim with a formal written apology and has made a commitment to discipline the perpetrator. There's clearly other methods and measures one can use in this process, including equality training and Islamophobia combat training. Case study 2. A client contacted the IRU for assistance regarding a school's sudden decision to remove abaya from their previous accepted uniform policy. The IRU immediately invoked the complaints procedure and alleged religious discrimination and a failure to consult. Whilst the complaints procedure was ongoing, the school took steps to penalise our clients' daughters. As this started to take a toll on their mental health and well-being, the IRU battled with the school and managed to persuade them to refrain from implementing this oppressive and unjustified behaviour towards the daughters. Ultimately, the IRU managed to persuade the school to allow abaya to be permitted with a slight modification to fall in line with other uniform requirements, while still, and most importantly, maintaining their modesty. Okay, now we've highlighted a few cases here, of which those of you who are unaware of them, I urge you to read them. So, as you know, summaries are available. I would like to bring you these to your attention. So this is Rex, TTT, Michaela, Community School Trust, a landmark case involving a Muslim claimant where half of the school's pupils were Muslim. There's a strict integration policy with limited religious practices, no prayer facilities. Prayer during the breaks were banned. And this was a claim under Article 9 of the Human Rights Act for indirect discrimination. And both claims were dismissed as a proportionate interference by the school, showing the importance of our work, challenging school policies which marginalizes faith practices. A very small adjustment could have been made and ought to have been made to accommodate the religious belief, in our opinion, of this claimant. And this is Ali, Mr. Ali, the Heathrow Express Operating Company Limited. And this Muslim employee, essentially, they were in a training exercise where on a test package, it was a security training exercise, a test package was put before the trainees with these words, Allahu Akbar. Now, this was a harassment claim under the Equality Act, which was dismissed. And the tribunal essentially found it proportionate in the context of security tests, justified the actions of the respondent. However, it's the IRU's belief that this simply reinforced harmful stereotypes. Clearly, the association with, as between harmful stereotypes, including individuals being of terrorists of Muslim belief, is a very harmful stereotype, and one that, in our opinion, ought not to be put forward in any training exercise. This suggests disproportionately that more terrorists are Muslim, which is simply not the case. So the IRU, we can address workplace, and we do address workplace stereotyping and offer sensitivity training. In the Miller case and the University of Bristol, Professor David Miller was dismissed for his anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian views. The tribunal upheld the dismissal, and found that the anti-Zionist views were a protected belief under the Equality Act, under Section 10 of the Equality Act. But this was a complex case of political expression and discrimination. So the claims of harassment were dismissed and adjusted compensatory levels. But again, it demonstrates the importance of the IRU working, supporting pro-Palestinian political speech and fighting Islamophobia narratives. Thomas and Surrey and Borders Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. Here, the contractor was dismissed for anti-Islamic English nationalism. The police failed the Granger test which violated the dignity and human rights of Thomas. Court reinforced limits of hate speech in protected beliefs, and post the Southport riots heightened the need to address rhetoric. The IRU has a key role in combating hate speech disguised as freedom of expression. And our recent activities, well, you could do a simple audit to find those, but there you go. We are consistently campaigning, influencing, and trying to shape a more equal and equitable religious belief landscape for Muslims and those who are perceived to be Muslims. So although we are a small charity, as I said before, we have big reach. Recent successes, these are small file notes, but they give us sort of an example, tangible examples of our achievements. And the client required support in relation to a potential claim for harassment and discrimination in the workplace. And the IRU negotiated a settlement sum of 14k in her favour, which may not sound much to some of you, but to others, it's a significant amount of compensation. And it's a small step in addressing the injury to feelings that some of our clients have incurred. The IRU wrote to the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries to express concerns about a former member who has made 83 Islamophobic posts to Twitter. Following the IRU's intervention, as well as being ordered to pay the respondent costs of 22,667, the perpetrator was issued with a reprimand and excluded from the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries membership. He may not apply for readmission for a period of 2 years. We have successfully supported several mosques against unreasonable scrutiny from the Charity Commission. We've appointed approximately 30 new volunteer caseworkers and supervisors in the last 3 months. We have established new partnerships with various organisations and law firms, including the University of Nottingham, Nottingham Trent University, barristers at 33 Bedford Row Chambers, and 11 King's Bench Walk, which we sincerely thank. Our partners are there for you all to see, and we thank them for their contribution and their support towards the Islamophobia response unit, the IRU, without which we could not undertake our work. So there you have it. For more information, all the details are as follows. I thank you for your time. It's an honour to work for the IRU, and then now we'll switch to our chair, Salma, for her to take over the next session. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Anya, and thank you so much, Imam, as well, both for sharing all of that with us, and especially Anya for letting us know about how and where we can go to for help. So I'm just going to go through the questions that have come through, and actually it's a nice kind of like segue into the first question, which we did actually get. It was, where do you go to for support when you experience Islamophobia or microaggressions? And I hope that that question has now been answered. You go to the Islamophobia response unit. Yeah. So thank you.
I might just add into a comment to that. So obviously it depends upon the nature of the incident, but be aware that there are various support networks out there. Obviously the IRU is a very well established formal one, but make use of your other support networks around you. So if you're just experiencing discrimination or Islamophobia in one way or another in a workplace environment, then do speak to people you can trust within that organisation. So hopefully you've got a compassionate support partner or line manager, and I would say that should naturally be your first port of call. And if you're kind of feeling reluctant to do that, then that's probably indicative of perhaps a wider problem, which maybe you need to escalate within the organisation. But I think you'll hopefully be pleasantly surprised at the number of supportive people and allies that will be very near to you, and that will hopefully help guide you through any problems that you encounter. That would be my advice as well.
And Salma, if I could just add to that slightly, obviously, as Iman says, at an in-house level, but there's also ACAS, Conciliation Service, which is a free service where you could take preliminary guidance. And also, if you are a member of the trade union, do liaise with your trade union to take advice. That can be free, and it's always worthwhile to take impartial advice.
Thank you both. So the next question, I'm just going to put these questions together because we do have some repeat questions. It's around allyship and how can non-Muslims or people from different backgrounds be stronger allies in the workplace? Can you perhaps help with this or expand or provide some kind of real life examples? So if any one of you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I can maybe sort of start on that. And I think some responses, and maybe Salma, you can chime in as well. I guess you've got plenty of experience of working in the legal environment in Bristol. I think in a way, sort of the last question provides a partial answer to this question, because where people are experiencing difficulties, it's important for them to have people that they can turn to. As an ally, it's really important to kind of make yourself known, aware and available to support colleagues when they need it most. And that's kind of easier said than done, because you don't really know when somebody's experiencing difficulty or going through a difficult period and need that support. So the thing to do, I would say, is just to kind of build those relationships in advance. So where you are in an environment where there are colleagues from different backgrounds and different faiths, not exclusively just for the Muslim colleagues, but people from different backgrounds that might be experiencing difficulties or discrimination in different areas, then just being human and getting to know people is probably the most important step you can take, because when those people then experience any problems, they know that there's people they can speak to in kind of a natural way, who might be able to guide them. And I think that there are roles for allies kind of at any level within an organisation as well. So some people think, you need allies at board level, at senior level. You very much do, but that doesn't mean that if you're not at that senior level, that you don't have a role to play in terms of allyship. So where you are kind of at a grassroots level, at junior level, working with people on a day-to-day basis, the more of an ally you are, it can actually be more effective than the senior allies, because you're going to be interacting more regularly with people. So so just kind of the basics really of just making yourself known and available, and just being human and getting to know people, and trying to understand what the problems are that people might be facing. And I would also say, maybe as a final bit of advice for allies, is not to be kind of shy about asking questions. Some people feel some things might be sort of out of bounds if you kind of raise things which are talking about politics or religion, but there's no harm in talking about these things, so long as you frame it in a sort of genuine, curious and interested way, rather than giving a perception that you're trying to kind of make people feel different. So long as you're using kind of the inclusive language, and raising sort of general questions from a place of genuine interest, I think the more conversations you can have with people is the better. Don't know, Thelma, do you agree with that?
I do. Personally, from my own experiences, the way that I've always known who is an ally, it is down to just the simple kind of conversations. It is about how that conversation, how it takes place, how the questions are framed, and you know very quickly that somebody's genuinely interested. And honestly, if you ask you'll be surprised, because people ask me all kinds of things, and they're always worried that sometimes that they're going to upset me because of how they've not worded the question correctly. And it's, we're not, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm not quite that sensitive, and it's always very clear where this intention is coming from. And it's been really useful. Lots of good conversations, lots of knowledge sharing. I recently learned from other people about their beliefs. I then shared my beliefs, and it's a great way to just know your colleagues and interact with them. And once you have these conversations, it's also about this kind of building trust as well. And trust is really important. And again, it all comes down to fostering, an inclusive workplace, and everybody benefits. And yeah, Anya, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, if I may. Yes, for me, and I think from my experience as an employment lawyer, and in some cases, it's about finding safe spaces to discuss any concerns or any matters you have in this respect. So it's about really understanding the people around you. And it's the people around you who are the keys to influence and change, and having a more equal workplace culture. I have experience of advising many corporate businesses in respect of transformation programs, and I would advocate the requirement for equality training to include Islamophobia training as well. Clearly, we know that to some extent, equality and diversity training actually mitigates for business in terms of any defence at tribunal. But let's stand aside from tribunal and mitigation and look at actually the reality on the ground. It's a wise investment for business to roll out equality and diversity training, and to home in on specific challenging areas such as Islamophobia, which is very prevalent in today's culture, and something that I think people really need to have proper learning and development programs in the workplace. Of course, there's informal resolve, and that could just be having a quiet word with somebody and talking to them about the feelings you have, and possibly any hurt emanating from any words or gestures that have been applied to you. But there's also informal resolve as consistent with the ACAS Code of Practice and that spirit of informality. Through informality, we get education, and through education, we get change, and we get understanding, and we try to level the playing field. So we are all influencers and leaders in this subject matter. And by working collectively, we can make change.
Thank you, Anya. So I'm mindful of time, because I know a lot of people have now joined during their lunch hour. We've got about 15 minutes left, and we have a lot of questions. So I'm going to try and get through as many of these as I possibly can. And I do think there's some crossover. So the next question is probably, very close to my heart. How are firms making, or how can even firms make their networking events more accessible to Muslims? Does anybody want to go first?
I'll maybe just mention that. I think that's an interesting one. I think there are different types of networking events at different points within different teams within organisations. So you have sort of internal networking events that firms host, and you have client events. Depending on speaking as a partner in a law firm, we're a service sector, so we need to kind of look after our clients and understand what their needs are. So when designing events to be attractive to clients, then we're thinking about what it is that will encourage them to come along and make sure they have a good, productive time and is useful for everyone. And then likewise with internal events, it's around coming up with ideas that kind of bring people together and foster kind of togetherness and team spirit. kind of the clear answer, the main answer to that, I would say, is around alcohol. So from a from a Muslim perspective, don't like to be at events where alcohol is prevalent. And I appreciate, there may be some circumstances where it would be appropriate for there to be alcohol at certain, dinners or events or receptions. But I feel there is a trend away from, alcohol being a part of these types of events. Certainly in the time I've been practicing over the last sort of 20 years or so, there are a lot more kind of inclusive events which have kind of less of an alcohol component. So yeah, I would just sort of highlight the alcohol component and think about, is it essential? Can that be taken out? Just by taking that out, you become more inclusive.
Thank you, Imam, for that. I'm just going to so as a junior, I find it quite difficult, but we've come a long way since I first qualified, and because actually of the alcohol prevalent events. But now I found, certainly in my opinion, and a lot of people that I've spoken to as well, that actually when you do go to these events, not all of them, well, the people are more creative with events. Also around timing as well. So every Friday, everyone doesn't just go down to the pub after work anymore. Obviously there's people that do, but it's people are moving away from this and creating space. And one of the things that I've quite liked is going out or having networking events around lunchtime, which are quite nice, with a mix of drinks and a mix of food as well. And I think that's really good, because food is also another thing which is very close to my heart. I love food, and I eat halal food, and I love going to events where I actually get halal meat that I can eat. So I think this is this is something that I think firms could perhaps ask the people that are out there for what would you like. I think it's always about having that conversation and just kind of listening and asking, and then listening to the answer, and then doing what you possibly can to accommodate anyone's dietary requirements, the kind of events that they want to go to. Also maybe being a bit careful about timings. And one of the things that I've found that people are very accommodating with as well recently is prayer spaces. So a lot of the events I go to, I will ask, is there a place for me to go for prayer? And normally this is a very easy kind of fix where you're provided with an office or a space which is suitable to your needs. And I think, again, I just think a lot of this is just having conversations with people that it affects and asking them what will work for you, because normally it's a very kind of easy or quick fix and cost-effective fix as well. Anya, did you want to add anything?
Just a small point, Salma. From my perspective of working with business, it's really important that business understands its workforce and understands who is Muslim by analysing on a confidential basis data they've been provided by virtue of the equality of opportunity form, as it's called, or quality form, really to understand that, but also to have a balanced network community, because from my perspective, this is about inclusion, and inclusion for all, because inclusion for all is the greatest learning and development tool, and the informality at networking events is a super foundation for people to get to know each other, to break down those barriers, to bring individuals in from the margins, and to place them at the heart of workplace culture. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question I've got through is how should we respond where we are recipients to those more unseen forms of Islamophobia, such as unconscious bias or stereotyping?
I guess that's quite a deep question that could take quite a long time to answer. So maybe I'll just give one small suggestion, which would be, where possible or appropriate, trying to deal with it in the moment. So don't let things sort of linger or fester. If you just kind of deal with things straight away as they arise, by engaging with the person who who has done that, because it might be conscious or unconscious. So just have a conversation with them about it. If that's not appropriate, speak to somebody else or one of your allies. But I would say, yeah, do it kind of straight away. Don't let it fester.
Thank you, Mum. Anya, did you want to add to that?
Just a small point. Again, I'm consistent with Iman on that informal chat, if at all possible. However, I have conducted cases where that small chat can escalate with the passage of time and create a hotbed of hate within the workplace. So one has to really exercise their discretion to understand if there's been unwanted comments, derisory, derogatory comments. Are they capable of informal resolve? Is it something that the company should be nurturing, a culture of chatting, or is it that an informal investigation in accordance with procedure is required? Okay, which is still informal, and it still can come out with learning and development measures and cultural change in the workplace. But actually, in a lot of the cases that I've had, obviously have gone to tribunal, that the individual possibly has experienced a continuing course of unwanted conduct from the alleged discriminators, and my advice would be to actually seek representation and or draft a grievance in accordance with the grievance procedure in-house. But the bottom line is, as we all know, speaking up can have repercussions, and so one has to really protect oneself, and much will depend on the degree of seriousness of the alleged misconduct. So I would have to adjust my advice according to the nature of the derisory, discriminatory comments.
Thank you, Anna. That's very helpful. We have an interesting question here, which is, do you feel that law firms are using the tool of marketing as well as they could be when it comes to their role in combating Islamophobia? And what else could they be doing?
That's a good question. Are they using a tool of marketing? Probably not, I would say. At the moment, I don't think there's much join up or much linkage between marketing teams at law firms and that sort of Islamophobic or anti-Islamophobic agenda. But I think there is probably a gradual shift I detected. So in our firm, for example, we've now got a sort of director of responsible business. And there is now somebody kind of at board level who sits alongside the sort of client development team and the HR team to feed into the sort of broader strategy. So I think that's something that's there's definitely a lot that can be done. I don't think it's being done very well at the moment, but there is progression, and it's things like the way the firm portrays itself externally, and how much the values of diversity and inclusivity, for example, are portrayed as important to that firm's external image. And I think that can be done quite easily, and it's quite effective from a business perspective as well, because for those involved in tenders with big organisations or public sector, there's a requirement to show commitment to, for example, diversity and inclusion, and if you have that embedded in your culture and communications, then that's probably the way to do it. So yeah, lots more that can be done, and I think we're getting there on that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, well, I'm unsure if law firms are using marketing to combat Islamophobia. I simply couldn't provide an answer on that. I can provide the gist of my experience of law firms, and I think some are making very genuine attempts to combat inequalities. But at the same time, I think some are applying quite draconian processes as well in terms of recruitment. And when individuals are from isolated and marginalized communities, it is not always easy to unlock their talent. I've sat on numerous interview panels where actually simple responses have been given by the candidate. But actually, if you get an interviewer like myself and others who experience, one knows how to unlock talent, to probe. Now, that's not to facilitate simply the answers, the right answer. It's to actually empower them to be able to feel more confident in the interview, and actually encourage them to elaborate on their simple answers. And it's surprising the results that can emanate from that simple empowerment tool that can change the whole fabric of that recruitment process. And all of a sudden you can see an individual who's been compounded by the passage of time of Islamophobic comments or experiences. You can see them actually empowering, becoming themselves, and thinking, well, actually, I'm as good as anybody else in this process, and therefore I'm going to give this process a really good punt, which I have witnessed and really enjoyed witnessing and commended them. And they have been appointed or received awards as a result by a joint panel. So I've seen the real results there. As Iman says, you know, business and organizations sometimes have HR, they have compliance teams, sustainability professionals. I feel it's their responsibility as well to lead on influencing internal practices, including recruitment, but also workplace culture, and also external practices as well. So how do you outreach those people? How do you outreach individuals who've been marginalised and isolated in society, yet are full of merit? Well, it takes some time and it takes a little research, and it's simply possible with a little effort, okay, by liaising with the right types of education providers, the community forums, by simply targeting the right press and advertising, by liaising and networking with other organisations, for example, such as the IRU and others. As my colleagues have explained today, there are other organisations to tackle Islamophobia. So I think it really is about not just an equality of opportunity policy. That's a written statement, often not implemented. It's actually, how do we make that active? You know, let's get it away from that dry policy document into an active energy of equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That's very powerful. I think I'm just going to squeeze one last question in, although I'm mindful of time. Any thoughts on how to promote a genuinely, and I think you've actually answered quite a lot of this already, to promote a genuinely inclusive work environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of covered lots of things. I think the most important thing would be around just that communication between people and openness and having regular conversations and building relationships between people is kind of the fundamental. And then there are specific things around, you know, alcohol, halal food, and places to pray. I would say I like those three.
Thank you, Mum. Anya, would you like to add any final thoughts?
Just simply, it is about bringing all those, regardless of their background, together to learn and to develop within themselves as a group, and so that they can take that back to their communities to share that experience and the positivity flowing from that integration to others. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both Anya and Iman for coming along. It's been such a great session, and I want to thank all of our participants as well. And thank you for everybody who's posted questions. I really do hope that these answers helped. I'm absolutely certain that they have. And I do hope that everybody is able to go away to their organisations and have conversations and engage, and hopefully foster more inclusion in your workplaces. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you all have a very lovely afternoon. Thank you and goodbye.